No. It's
You
smashed.
couldn't write it, could you? Honestly, there's one thing after another.
Is it smashed?
Yeah, two of the panels that are moved,
Yeah.
and they're stilted and butts from about the bulkhead. The door opening, went bust. This week we've had an accident and you just got to say really, you couldn't make it up. So,
Yeah, doing all sorts of things.
honest to God.
We've been doing it quite well.
Okay. It's just coming up to 7 o'clock, so I'm going to start the meeting. Welcome everybody. I'm Carol Scott, I'm the Chair of Finance. We have Councillor Hughes, Councillor Clark, who are here today. And I'd obviously just like to take apologies for absence, please, from the clerk.
Sorry, we've got
Luann?
well, she's just from Luann, yes. Yes.
Is Tim on finance? No. Okay, so we're moving on to public session. So this gives the members of the public an opportunity to speak about anything that they want to address the council on in terms of the business that's on the agenda. Now, obviously, we are going to be considering grant applications tonight. So, are we going to be asking the members to speak to their applications as we reach them on the agenda, or are we going to take those now?
I would suggest that once we've done I suggest we do the declaration of interest, minutes of approval, and then bring up the grants to follow the minutes. That's okay with you.
Okay, so Martin, if you propose that?
Yes, we change the order for the meeting.
Yeah, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to move the grants consideration on the agenda. There's a few things we have to do first, and then what we'll do is we'll then go through the grants in the order in which we've got them on the agenda, okay? Yeah, do you want to,
I propose we change the order.
can I have a second to change the order of the agenda? Thank you, all in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, so declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the council? No? Okay. Lovely. Minutes for approval. So we have minutes of the 26th of May that have been previously circulated. Does anybody have any comments or alterations to the minutes, or does somebody want to propose that we sign them as a true and accurate record?
I can propose that. Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, all in favour? Thank you. Would you like me to sign those at the end of the meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay, fine. Right, next one. Now we're going to move on to the grants applications, which is item 7 on the agenda. We're now going to move it up the agenda to take that now.
Please take Swallow's application first.
We'd like to take Swallow's application first, if that's all right. Had a chance to look at the farmers market, and has anybody got any questions? Perhaps we could tailor the questions for them to answer, but then it's up to you. We can either make a decision today, or we can agree to defer it.
I mean, it's an annual event, this one, isn't it? So, you know, we approved £1,000 last year. I'm confident we're going to do the same this year. I think it would have been nice if they were here to have a conversation with them about the market, and particularly as they're indicating financial pressures. I know there's reluctance for them to help us with developing something on the market square that has just had £2 million spent on. But it'd be nice if they were to, at some point, be able to come and chat with us about their aspirations going forward, and if we can tie those in with our aspirations for the town and the town market. But I don't have a problem with this continuation of £1,000 a year support.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we could have a dialogue with them about, you know, how they're managing, what we can do to help, or how we can contribute to the event, because it's not as well attended as when I've been down as it has been in the past. And but as it says in the application, you know, there are certain number of the population or residents that don't really benefit and use the market. So really, I hate to see it suffer anymore. So we need to keep supporting it.
I mean, is it both their interest and our interest for us to have a successful
Yes.
market in the town?
Yeah.
But we don't ever seem to be in the same room discussing that. And it'd be nice for us all to be in the same room, making sure we're all going in the same direction.
Okay. So there's two things here really. One of course is obviously the proposal for the grant, but then obviously what's been raised is perhaps an invitation to the farmers market to come and talk to the council about other plans as well. Would we want them to come directly to a council meeting, or perhaps is it worth having a meeting with the officers and maybe a couple of councillors in the first instance to then bring something to council, do you think?
Well, I mean, there's two avenues. It depends whether we want to look at it from a financial perspective or an events perspective, because we now have an events committee that perhaps should be reviewing the long-term use of the market square. So maybe that's the vehicle.
Yeah. So it might be better to talk officers to talk to the business and see what the best ways we can help them. Because find out more about it.
That then allows the events committee to feed into F&O, for example, and how we can finance any changes we want to do.
Okay. So it sounds to me like then that we've got kind of like two proposals. The first is obviously to grant a grant of £1,000, and the second is to refer the longer term review to the events committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So proposals.
Yeah.
Seconder.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favour? So that is both for the grant of £1,000 and also to refer the longer, wider picture for them to come and talk to events committee. Yeah? Super. Are we now clear of the grants?
Yes.
Is that okay? Right, now I'll go back to find my agenda. Right. Okay, so
So can I just clarify, are we being videoed or not? And if we are, is it being live streamed or just recorded?
It's not being live streamed, it is being recorded.
Okay, thank you.
okay, so we're now going to move back to agenda item 5, which is the accounting statement for May 2026. Now these have all been circulated in the pack. There is one matter that I would like to bring up when we go through them. So we've got, obviously, the first three items are in connection with bank reconciliation for the Unity Trust account. That is for the what essentially is the council's working current account. So we get the bank statement, we get the receipts and payments from Rialto's printout, and then we get the bank reconciliation, which is essentially the decision. I'm doing this for the benefit of the family, by the way, which is essentially the thing that we've been asked to make a decision on today to approve the bank reconciliation to make sure that everything adds up. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously you've seen the bank statement and the cash book. Are you happy to approve the bank reconciliation and to note the two reports that accompany it?
Yeah.
Yeah. All in favour? Thank you. So I will sign the bank reconciliation because it agrees with the figures on the bank statement. There is one matter I'd like to raise, however, having seen the bank statements. The bank statements contain personal details of individual payments made to individual staff, and I would like to ask that in future the bank statements are redacted of this information because it's personal and private.
Yeah.
Okay. The next three items are referring to the bank reconciliation for the CCLA. CCLA is, if you like, a deposit or savings account. So when the council gets precept in, it doesn't keep it all in the current account, it will move a certain amount of money into the CCLA so that that gathers interest, and then it will be moved down in tranches to cover the council's expenditure. So you've got the CCLA bank statement, which obviously has got only two transactions on it. One is the amount, current balance, and then there's the interest that is added for that month. And obviously that's shown in the cash book, receipts and payments. and then the bank reconciliation, which agrees with the figures in Rialto. So are you happy to approve the bank reconciliation for the CCLA account?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, next we move on to earmark reserves. Without wanting to jump ahead, but I think it should be raised now as we've been given the earmark reserves. So the earmark reserves, for the benefit of the camera, are amounts of money that the council has decided over the year to set aside into very specific earmark reserves for very specific things. So for instance, the council received a payment from Bates to go towards planting costs, and that has been put into an earmark reserve, so it's not just spent on anything else, it's spent specifically for that. The council has made a £10,000 provision out of this year's budget for play equipment replacement. As we all know, play equipment replacement is quite expensive, so we need to start building reserves to be able to replace play equipment as and when it's needed. There are several earmark reserves there which have been brought up in the internal audit in connection with the town hall costs for refurbishment. The council has set aside certain monies that are for the projected expenses of the remaining town hall refurbishment costs. There is also an earmark reserve there for the 49,000 retention fee. I'd just like to correct an article in the press as the camera is on. There was meant to be £49,000 retention fee due last financial year because the town hall project, we have been told, would be finished. Obviously it wasn't finished, the retention fee was not due. The council therefore has moved the years. There has been no additional money put aside. There is no additional £59,000 as reported in the press. All that has happened is the 49,000 that was meant to be paid last year, which hasn't been, has been moved to this year, and then the one that was meant to be paid this year, the second tranche, has been moved to the following year. That's what's been picked up. The one thing that I do want to raise, however, is earmark reserves still 24-25 and still 25-26. In February 2026, the Town Council approved and minuted using the still 24-25 monies towards the Town Hall refurbishment costs. It was agreed that they would be fired over, and the earmark reserves here are showing that that still hasn't been done. So that's something that we need to point out, something that I'd like to address to the RFO to make sure that that happens. And that's properly accounted for. And that means that that didn't happen before year end, because it's still showing in the accounts. And that's something that the internal auditor has picked up as we get on to the report that you'll see later. Okay? So we're going to note the earmark reserves with those comments. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. The next item we're going to move on to is detailed income and expenditure by budget heading. This is for the month to the end of May. What this shows us is what has actually been spent to date, how that compares with the actual budget that's been set, and it indicates where maybe perhaps we may be either overspending, or it could just be because we pay one particular thing, like the insurance, we pay it annually, and so we use up all the budget at once, which is why the budget might read 100%. So based on the Rialto's figures that we've got for the income and expenditure heading, are there any points that members want to raise in terms of anything that's covered there? At the moment, I can't see. We're only into the second month. Interestingly, I know that we've got some still income, some more still income, which is good. We have received the precept, so the precept has come in, or half the precept, because we get it one bit paid in April and the other bit paid 6 months later. As far as expenditures going against the budget, I don't know, is there anything that struck you, Margaret, that you'd like to comment on? Okay, so are we going to make the income expenditure for this month?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much for preparing these reports. And now we're going to move on to... So, what we're looking at here is the schedule of accounts for payment. So council approves each month the payments to be made, and this is supplied to council of all the payments to be made, and then the payments that have been made come back to the finance committee for us to note, to make sure that what we said was going to be paid has been paid. So are there any comments on the schedule of accounts for payment? That's right, isn't it? This is the note of what's been paid. This is, yeah, I think so. And we will also come to the bit about going in and checking the paperwork in a minute. I mean, I can't see any entries on here to specific suppliers that we're not already aware of. I just want to make sure, in the same vein as I've commented about personal details and personal payments on the bank statements, we accumulate summaries on these here, don't we? So that there's no individual personal payments. Okay, that's fine. Any comments? No, you happy to know these?
No, it's all good.
Super. Thank you very much as well, by the way, for including the schedule of income.
Yay.
So what we're seeing now is we're seeing obviously income coming in from the town fair, and also income coming in from the bookings for the Orchard Hall. I know that's been quite difficult to untangle, so thank you very much for your efforts on that. Okay, so that's the financial pack. Have we not got the bit about aren't we meant to be appointing someone to check the paperwork for next month?
Yes,
So,
yes.
where is that one then? Oh yeah, to nominate councillor to check the invoices as part of the agenda. So last month, I believe, Luann was asked to check.
That was the month before.
Oh, that was the month before.
Last month, I was meant to alert Councillor Sean Hughes when I was ready for him to come to the office, but I did not do so. So we have not checked the April finances, so we need to do the April and
Yeah, if you, because I'm really sure.
Absolutely, that's
Yeah.
fine. No, I mean, as long as it gets done, that's fine.
Are you happy to nominate me to
Yes.
come in and do all the payments? Okay, lovely. Okay, so that's me to do it for April and May. Right, and now we move on to item 6, the internal auditor's report. Now, obviously the internal auditor's report, you want to sign that?
And 2 reconciliations.
Okay, what's the date today? 26 reconciliations. I need to issue bank statements. I don't know how to do that anymore. I'm sorry, I've signed in the wrong place. I have to put my name in capitals in the sign place. Those in the bank statements to issue. Okay, so the internal auditor's report arrived literally just before council. Obviously council has considered that, as it needed to consider the internal auditor's report in order to determine what it should be doing about its responses to the AGAR assertions. At the council meeting, the council only noted the report because, as far as our governance structure is concerned, the internal audit report would normally come to Finance Committee first. We would go through it, we would make recommendations to council, and then the report would go to council for it to be approved, including with the recommendations. So, unfortunately, owing to time constraints, the report had to be seen by council to inform the AGAR, so council just noted the report and referred it back to us. So, now, I am not going to propose, there are 33 pages of this. There are, and a lot of it is down to previous audit recommendations, which I think we also need to bear in mind, some of which have been followed up, as has been stated, but some of which haven't. But I think the council also considered a management report, which it noted, again, hasn't approved it because they're waiting for it to come to us first. So I think the first thing to point out is that on the whole, council's finances and governance are acceptable, save for certain recommendations that have been made in the internal audit report, of which there are a list. Now, some of the other things, we've already mentioned one, the earmark reserves, that has been brought up. We know that there has been some confusion with the earmark reserves, and that needs to be sorted out. That is part of how these earmark reserves have been accounted for in our Rialtas accounting system. So that refers to also the 2020, so if we just go through item number 1, 2024-25 balance sheet included an estimate for retention due to contractors of 88,760. This is down to the fact that the amount to be retained was taken not from the valuation certificate, which is just a one piece of paper, but if you remember, we get cost reports from the project managers, and that figure is 88,716 was taken from the cost report, not from the valuation certificate, which was issued previously. So according to the auditor's guidance, what we should be doing is we should, even though we know that we will potentially have to pay more in a retention fee, because that was what the official documentation said at the time, which was less, then that is the amount that we have to put in. So that was in 24-25, and then what we need to do is, what we haven't done is put in a retention for 25-26. So it's a liability. The retention is something as part of the contract that the council will have to pay, and it will be split into two halves. The first half will be due this year now, not last year, and the second half will be due the year after. And I believe that there has been a recent valuation certificate issued, which will be discussed in the next item. But obviously, we can see where that error has occurred, and what we need to do is look at how we need to manage the accounts to ensure that that is rectified, to make sure that it's also applicable to the valuation certificate that was in existence at the time. Okay? So our recommendation is that there needs to be a thorough investigation of how the earmark reserves and the retentions have been expressed both in the previous financial year and the financial year that's just passed, and any further adjustments that might need to be made will need to be addressed as such. The only question I have got is then how will this affect the AGAR figures, and whether we will then need to wait until the following year and then issue a restatement of the AGAR, or whether we can do something about it before the external auditor actually looks at the AGAR. Okay? So is everybody happy with that? So that's proposing for numbers 1, and also it addresses numbers 2. Because it's addressing all the way that earmark reserves and amounts have been applied to the town hall project. Item 3 is again an accounting error which needs to be addressed in the accounts, and again we need to find out whether that will affect the AGAR and the figures that the council has approved on the AGAR, and how that now works with the external auditor. Some of the others in here do point to the interactions between the internal auditor and people that the internal auditor is asking for information from. I think that what this really relates to in terms of is how the year end has been conducted this year. Now, as you are aware, our RFO left a month before the year end. And obviously then we've had to have a temporary person come in without the knowledge and the experience, so it could be that there has been some errors in communication. My recommendation would be that our clerk engages with the internal auditor to find out exactly what information was asked for, what the checklist was that was provided, and what the information was sent to the internal auditor, and then actually ask it to make sure that they have the correct information, because there are other matters in this internal audit report that aren't correct. So I'm going to make that proposal to you both, that one of the things that appears to be underlying some of these things is that the information did not exchange hands in the proper way, with the correct information, and that has meant that the internal auditor has drawn certain conclusions that aren't necessarily based upon the actual documentation. Is that a fair representation? Do you think of some of the things that are in here?
The system that the internal auditor uses is by way of an upload of information to a portal. So rather than a checklist being issued that perhaps a number of people could have reviewed before it being submitted. So yeah, that's how the information is given to the auditor.
Okay. So if we're looking at recommendations then, what we're looking at in terms of the recommendation is that the year-end practices need to be thoroughly overseen, revisited. We need to understand what information was and wasn't uploaded this year, because some information certainly wasn't uploaded that should have been, judging by what the auditor has said. And that also we have in place a proper system as to how that will be overseen for next year. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. That includes the item 4 in terms of the prepayments. Obviously, item 5, my understanding is that normally when you do year-end accounts on Reatus, you shouldn't do the VAT return until you've actually got the year-end finished with the year-end processes that we pay Reatus to help us do. My understanding is that VAT went in before this was done, and that's why there's an understatement of the VAT figures, because there haven't been the appropriate prepayments and accruals and everything conducted at that time. So again, this is about year-end and how it's conducted, and that we need to make sure that it's properly conducted in future, especially at the next year-end. But then we also need to, yet again, look into how is it that this error that's been notified to us by the internal auditor, how does this impact our year-end figures for 25-26 and the AGAR, or is this something now that we now need to rectify in the year 26-27 and that will then come out in the next AGAR? So I'd like to ask, obviously, that we get a report back to say what the impacts are of these particular things. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes, you see item 6 again, this is about this whole portal and transaction thing. Fixed asset register dated October 24, no changes disclosed. I think that was just about timing because we actually did approve the fixed asset register, but that fell into the April 26-27 year. So obviously what we didn't do was we didn't have the fixed asset register actually approved during the current financial year. But from what I understand, we've approved the corporate governance timetable now at full council, and that means that the asset register is now timetabled as part of the process, so that it will be reviewed within the financial year and that it will be reviewed before the insurance is due. Is that right? Which happens quite early on in the year, doesn't it? Okay, fine. So that has already been addressed through the corporate governance timetable and when the insurance is due. Item 8, £500. This items, I understand that you'd already addressed that. This was yeah, so that's already addressed. Data protection policy. I understand that the clerk has already got a policy in consideration, and that will be coming to the next finance committee. Is that right? Yeah. Again, we're talking about the internal audit checklist. This is to confirm whether the council is a sole trustee. Again, this is about the fact that that form was completed without oversight. If you look at the ADAR that was published on the website for 24-25, it definitely ticked the fact that the council was a trustee. And so therefore, I think what we're referring to here is not what's being published on the website, but the internal communication between people who were providing the internal audited information, people who hadn't worked for the council for very long. So I think that has already been addressed, and it will also be included as part of the whole oversight of how year-end procedures and communication with the internal auditor works. Item 11, this is just
this was a historic one I wasn't really aware of, but absolutely, yeah. Heroes.
yeah, this is about checking, isn't it? This is about the councillors being able to check that that is what has happened. Okay. So item 12, the current issue, no evidence of implementation 25-26 provided. Again, this is where things become difficult when you're using an electronic portal to upload electronic documents, because I can absolutely attest that when I come in to check the documentation, check the invoices, check the payments and everything like I should be doing for April and May, I actually initialed the payroll amounts and cross-check them against the statements. So again, I would say that that is part of the controls were there, but the evidence was not given to the internal auditor. So we need to understand what the internal auditor is expecting in terms of documentation to show that, because I routinely initialed it, checked all the adding up, checked everything. Okay.
To be fair, I don't think officers in the office were aware that some of the evidence that was required. Had we been, we probably could have provided some of the evidence where it's stated no evidence of implementation was provided. It could have been that we could have actually provided the evidence, but because of the portal situation, it's difficult.
Right, we're now moving to the previous, the interim internal audit from 25-26. I think and then we go back. So basically, pages 1 to 11 are all with regards to the audit that's been conducted, the final interim audit. What the auditor has then chosen to do is to reproduce various things from interim audits going back to, when was the last one that it went back to? think it's just gone back to 2025, hasn't it? And then what he's done is he's then commented on the internal controls on the AGAR section 3. So the rest of the report is explaining why he's commented on the AGAR section that the Town Council considered on the 1st of June, and why he's put those things in the columns that the internal auditor has to complete. Okay, and on that basis, and on the basis of the internal audit report, the council, I think, therefore decided that it was going to answer no to some of the assertions in, I think it's page 2, isn't it? As to things that it felt that it hadn't done as well as it should have done, and that had been pointed out to it by the internal auditor. Okay, so because I'm conscious that this is being recorded, I don't see that we can go through. It's now 8 o'clock. I think that what we need to do is, I think a lot of these matters that have so far been identified are down to how the year end is handled. They're down to how the information has been given or not given to the internal auditor. And I think that what we need to do is we need to now make the recommendations to council, that most of these appear to be centred around how we account for earmark reserves in Rialtas once council has made decisions like it did in February. So the governance was there, the decisions were there about the earmark reserves, it just hasn't been documented in the account system. So that's the first thing, and what we need to do is we need to ensure that there is a proper understanding of how earmark reserves should be accounted for in the Rialtas system, and that can only be achieved by talking with Rialtas themselves. Okay. We also then need to make the recommendation that we need to have an appropriate year-end procedure and how that will be conducted, or how any interactions with the internal auditor will be conducted in future, because we don't just have a year-end audit, we have an interim audit as well. So I think we'd like to ask the clerk, RFA, to come up with an internal procedure to make sure that there is oversight and that we are understanding what particular documentation the internal auditor is looking for, and that isn't taken as gospel by the internal auditor until it's been checked and confirmed. Then the next thing that we need to do is we need to understand how some of these changes in the accounts can be made, and whether that has an impact on the AGAR figures that have been produced for the financial year 25-26, and whether or not that means we carry it through into 26-27 and make the adjustments in 26-27, which will then come through into the end of this year's accounts next year with a restatement of the AGAR. So we need to understand how that would work, and that will be for both the Rialtas and the internal auditor, I would presume. Again, yeah? All good? All good? Okay. Anything else that I've forgotten? Anything else that anybody wants to raise?
No, I think the report from the clerk is very comprehensive in response. So I'm more than happy with the report and the response on this. I think it's important that people viewing this report, understand the complexities of internal audits and understand the process, understand the scrutiny process and the governance around this, and not take one document in isolation, which will just will take things completely out of context and not give you a true picture. So hopefully people will actually take the time to review them correctly at the correct time with the correct information.
So the other recommendation we need to make to council is for it to accept all the recommendations made in the internal audit report. Okay, that we have addressed where we feel a lot of the issues lie, but that also I think the Finance Committee do need to come back and revisit some of the final matters from the previous interim audit. We asked for an update to be provided at the next Finance Committee meeting of matters.
On the interim audit.
Oh yeah, on the interim audit, which is the one that follows. And also any comments in relation to, I mean, I know that these are all about AGOR internal control objective G, which he has followed up actually and said it has been corrected, it was corrected, all of this, so that's fine. But we obviously need to make sure that we've complied with the internal audit interim, which the council has seen and approved, and we need to obviously make sure that the recommendations going forwards from what we've seen with this report go to council, along with recommendation that it accepts all the recommendations in the report. Yeah, does somebody want to propose that?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favour? Excellent. Are you okay with all the different actions that we talked about here to go with it? Yeah. Sure? Yeah. Okay. Super. Is there anything else that anybody wants to raise on the internal audit report before we move on?
No, I think it's all there.
Okay. Super. Okay. And for the benefit of the camera, the notice of public rights means that anybody who is a member of the public who is concerned can actually apply to inspect the council's accounts and everything. There should be a notice on the website. We'll make sure that's prominently displayed. So if members of the public are concerned, that they can apply to inspect the internal accounts. And that's before they go to the external auditor. So the next step is the external auditor. Okay, so we are going to now skip review of grant applications because we've just done that. We're going to move on to item 8, which is the Christmas lights procurement. There has been a full report circulated to members of the committee. Would you like to say anything about the report?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so just further to the report, just some additional information to give you with regards to the infrastructure. It would appear that where there are failures with the infrastructure, that things will review. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Where there are issues with the infrastructure, they can be reported to Baines, like with the switches and the timers, they can be reported to Baines, and I'm relatively confident that they will be paid for by Baines. They did repair a number last year at their cost, so the precedent is there. So I think we don't need to worry too much about the infrastructure costs at this moment. When reviewing supplier B, they will only supply the circa 3 metre size motifs. They will not, well, they will supply smaller, but it will be the same cost. So if you were thinking, well, we don't need 3 metres, we'll stick to 2 metres, supplier B can supply 2 metres, but it would be at the same cost as the larger ones. Yes.
Okay.
But I'm happy to answer any questions to give any further information.
Okay. So essentially this year we are going to have to fund, which we knew because we put some money in the budget for it, fund the Christmas lights. Whereas previously there used to be a concerted effort amongst all the parish councils that was coordinated by Baines, is that right? Yeah? So that's what used to happen previously. So what the council has done, again for the benefit of the camera, the council has set aside a total budget of £20,000 to cover all the Christmas celebrations, and that includes the Christmas lights, the Christmas tree and the switch on event. So at the moment, obviously, we haven't started planning for the Christmas event. That will be coming to the events committee once the town fair is out of the way. But there are costings now being sought, obviously, for the Christmas lights. There does need to be a decision made about these. So for the Christmas lights, we have normally put decorations on 15 lamp columns down High Street. Is that right? Okay, and then obviously what we're looking to do is to source decorations for those 15 lamp columns. We know that there may be some problems with the internal workings on the lamp columns, and that we think that Baines will probably assist in making them compatible with these lights that these companies are offering. Okay, so we've got quotes, some of which cover fault response commitments, some of which don't. They vary in price. Councillors, would either of you care to comment, having read the report?
Well, firstly, thank you for a comprehensive report on this. I think it very clearly lays out the options and the benefits of each bid. I think, as I've got the information I've got there, I would be happy to follow the recommendation of the clerk on this. My only, it's not really a concern. Lights are very much a visual thing, and the one thing we can't see from the reports is visually what we're getting. So we can see structurally, we can see costs, we can see everything we need to know. I don't know what we're getting, or what the difference is between A, B and C. That's not a deal breaker for me. I'm still happy to follow the recommendation, but it would be nice to follow that up with some sort of visuals to get an understanding of what physically we're likely to see.
I can bring that to council. It was absolutely on my list to follow up with pictures, but I just ran out of time. It was only discussed in the office that would absolutely be helpful. If it helps at all, I don't anticipate that the lights for company A and C would look any different, really, any different to what we've had in previous years in terms of scale and design. Company B would be more along the lines of what we might have seen that Westfield had.
Yeah.
So that,
and I think that's
what, I'm really only going to be showing you motifs of bells and stars, as you might imagine.
I think its intensity was one of the issues, because historically our lights have been quite dim. Now, whether that's because they're in a more illuminated area than Westfield, but every year the comment from residents is, don't Westfield's lights look very, they look more intense, more colour, more brightness to them.
So with company B,